a man in a $3,000 suit, a 9-year-old girl, a cup of juice spilled at 30,000 feet. It was an accident that became an insult that became a hateful racist attack. The man, Marcus Thorne, thought he was untouchable, protected by his wealth and his privilege. He thought the person he insulted was a nobody. He thought the flight crew worked for him. He was wrong on all counts. Because he didn't just bully a mother and her child. He did it on Captain David Henderson's plane. And the captain was about to teach him a lesson in respect that would cost him everything. The fluorescent hum of Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 3 was a familiar grating symphony to Dr. Evelyn Reed. It was a sound she associated with progress, with the stress of transit, and with the heavy weight of expectation. She clutched her leather briefcase in one hand, and more gently the small hand of her 9-year-old daughter Chloe in the other. "Mummy, are we going to be late?" Chloe asked, adjusting the headphones that hung around her neck. Her voice was small, but laced with the nervous excitement of a seasoned traveler. "No, baby. We're right on time," Evelyn said, forcing a smile. "Gate B12. We'll be there in 5 minutes." Evelyn was not just a mother. She was Dr. Reed, a leading pediatric cardiac surgeon, on her way to the annual National Medical Innovators Conference in Los Angeles. This wasn't just any speech. She was the keynote speaker. She was presenting a groundbreaking new surgical technique, a technique that could save thousands of children. The briefcase she held contained not just her laptop, but years of research data and sleepless nights. The pressure was immense, but she was used to it. She thrived in it. Her focus was a pinpoint laser, which is why she almost didn't notice the man who barreled past them, dragging a heavy roll-on bag that nearly clipped Chloe's legs. "Watch it," Evelyn snapped, pulling Chloe closer instinctively. The man didn't stop. He didn't even look back. He was tall, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Evelyn's first car. His hair was slicked back and he was barking into a Bluetooth earpiece. "Look, Peterson, I don't care what their board says." The man spat into his mic. "You tell them Marcus Thorne doesn't wait. You tell them that this merger is my last offer. If they're not ready to sign when I land, the deal is dead. I'll gut their supply chain and sell the pieces. Got it?" Marcus Thorne. The name sounded as sharp and unpleasant as his voice. He reached the priority boarding lane for first class and slapped his passport and ticket on the counter with an air of profound impatience. He was the kind of man who saw the world as a series of obstacles and subordinates. Evelyn and Chloe were flying business class, a hard-earned perk. As they lined up in their own priority lane, Evelyn overheard Marcus again, now berating the gate agent. "What do you mean pre-boarding isn't complete? I'm in 2A. I'm always in 2A. This is a 707, not a regional puddle jumper. Get me on the plane." "Sir, we're just boarding the families with small children and passengers needing extra assistance." The agent, a young woman named Brenda, said with a practiced, tight-lipped smile. Marcus scoffed loud enough for the entire gate to hear. "Unbelievable. Rewarding people for being slow. Just unbelievable." Evelyn felt a familiar coil of irritation tighten in her stomach. She saw Chloe watching the man, her bright eyes wide with curiosity and a little fear. "Don't mind him, sweetie," Evelyn murmured, smoothing Chloe's hair. "Some people just have bad manners." "He's like a grumpy bear," Chloe whispered back, which made Evelyn chuckle and release some of the tension. Finally their lane was called. They boarded the wide-bodied jet, turning left into the quiet, spacious business class cabin. Their seats were 10D and 10E, a comfortable pair in the center. Chloe immediately claimed the window seat, pressing her face to the thick plexiglass to watch the ground crew. Evelyn began her pre-flight ritual, stowing her precious briefcase under the seat in front of her, wiping down their trays and screens with antiseptic wipes, and pulling out Chloe's tablet and her own medical journals. A few minutes later, Marcus Thorne swaggered down the aisle. He stopped at 8B, 2 rows ahead of them. He huffed as he shoved his oversized bag into the overhead bin, hitting another passenger's coat. "Excuse you," the passenger, an older man, said. Yeah, Marcus muttered, not making eye contact before slumping into his seat and immediately pulling out his laptop, the screen glowing with a complex series of spreadsheets and stock tickers. The senior flight attendant, a calm, professional woman named Maria Gonzalez, moved through the cabin with a tray of pre-departure drinks. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Reed Chloe," she said, reading their names from her manifest. "Can I get you some orange juice or water?" "Orange juice, please," Chloe beamed. "I'll have a water, thank you, Maria," Evelyn said. When Maria moved to Marcus's row, his head was already buried in his laptop. "So, Mr. Thorne, a pre-departure beverage." "What-o, Scotch, Macallan 18, neat," he demanded. "I'm afraid I can only offer beer wine or soft drinks on the ground, sir. We can serve spirits after takeoff," Maria explained politely. Marcus looked up from his screen, his eyes radiating annoyance. "Then what's the point? Just bring me a water. No ice, and make sure it's actually cold." Maria's smile didn't falter. "Of course, sir." Evelyn caught the purser's eye for a split second and gave her a small, sympathetic nod. Maria returned it. It was a silent, universal acknowledgement. "We have a difficult one." The doors closed, the safety video played, and the heavy jet lumbered onto the runway. As they ascended, the engines roaring to full power, Evelyn settled in. She had 4 hours of uninterrupted work ahead of her. Chloe was already engrossed in an animated movie, her small cup of juice resting on the tray table. The flight was smooth. The cabin was peaceful. For an hour, the only sounds were the hum of the engines and the quiet click of Evelyn's laptop keys. Then the first beverage service began. The flight had reached its 35,000-foot cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign had been off for an hour. A junior flight attendant, Sarah Jenkins, was nervously pushing the heavy beverage cart down the aisle. It was only her 3rd week on intercontinental routes, and her movements were still mechanical and slow, lacking the effortless grace of veterans like Maria. Evelyn was deep in her work, reviewing surgical simulations, when she noticed Marcus Thorne, 2 rows up, becoming agitated. He'd finished his first scotch, which he'd ordered the second the plane crossed 10,000 feet, and was on his second. He was trying to get to the lavatory, but Sarah and her cart were blocking the aisle. "Excuse me," Marcus said, standing up. His voice cut through the cabin's quiet hum. Sarah, who was in the middle of pouring a ginger ale, startled. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'll be just 1 moment. I just need to—" "I don't have a moment," Marcus snapped. "I need to get by. Move the cart." "Sir, I can't move it backward," Sarah stammered, her cheeks flushing red. "If you could just wait 30 seconds, I can clear the aisle for you." "This is ridiculous," Marcus huffed. He was not a man accustomed to waiting. Instead of waiting, he decided to squeeze past the cart. He grabbed the top of the seat back in Evelyn's row to hoist himself around. It happened in a sickening slow-motion cascade. His elbow, sharp and unyielding in his expensive suit, knocked Sarah's unsteady hand. The full plastic cup of bright, sticky red cranapple juice she had just poured flew from her grasp. It seemed to hang in the air for a terrible second before arcing directly downward, splashing in a vibrant, ugly explosion all over Chloe. Chloe gasped a sharp, shocked sound. The cold, sticky liquid saturated the front of her white t-shirt. Her jeans and, most horrifyingly, her new tablet, which was propped up on the tray table. The juice pooled in the case and ran in red rivulets over the screen. The movie flickered and died. For a beat, there was total silence. Then Chloe's face crumpled, and she burst into tears. "Oh my goodness!" Sarah cried, dropping a handful of napkins in her panic. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." Evelyn's heart leaped into her throat. Her first instinct was pure, primal motherly rage. She unbuckled and was on her feet in an instant. "Chloe, baby, it's okay. It's okay," she soothed, grabbing the sodden napkins and trying to dab at the tablet, a futile gesture. "Oh, honey." "My tablet," Chloe sobbed, holding up her sticky hands. "It's broken. It's all wet." Marcus Thorne, who had successfully passed the cart, paused. He looked back at the scene, the crying child, the frantic flight attendant, the furious mother with an expression of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Get a grip, kid," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "It's just juice." Evelyn's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed to slits locked onto him. "You," she seethed. "You did this. You couldn't wait 2 seconds. You knocked the flight attendant. You owe my daughter an apology." Marcus actually scoffed. He adjusted his cufflinks, a deliberate, dismissive gesture. "I didn't do anything. Your kid had her drink in a stupid place. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm late I'm late." He brushed a non-existent speck of dust from his sleeve, a speck he seemed to imply had come from their row, and turned his back on them, heading toward the lavatory. "That's it," Evelyn said, her voice dangerously low. "You spill this all over a child, break her property, and you just walk away." He paused at the galley. Curtin looked back over his shoulder and said the words that lit the fuse. "Lady, it's a $100 tablet and a $5 t-shirt. I'm not going to buy you a new one. Get over it." And with that, he disappeared behind the curtain. Evelyn was shaking, not from fear, but from a profound, white-hot rage that was all too familiar. It was the same rage she felt when a colleague second-guessed her diagnosis or when a hospital administrator questioned her funding. It was the rage of a professional being dismissed. "Ma'am, doctor to read," Sarah was saying, her own eyes welling with tears. "I am so sorry. It was my fault. I'll get more napkins. I'll get the purser." "It was not your fault, Sarah," Evelyn said, her voice steel. She took the napkins from the trembling girl. "It was his. Go, get your purser, and get me a bag for this tablet." Evelyn Reed was a surgeon. She was trained to fix the unfixable. But as she looked at her sobbing daughter, she knew this wasn't a problem she could solve with a scalpel. This was a different kind of wound, and it was just about to get infected. By the time Marcus Thorne returned from the lavatory, the scene had been partially contained, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. Sarah had returned with a plastic biohazard bag for the dripping tablet and a stack of blankets for Chloe, who was now shivering in her wet clothes. Evelyn was kneeling in the aisle, trying to dry the seat, her face a mask of controlled fury. Maria Gonzalez, the purser, was with her. "Dr. Reed, I have a spare crew uniform shirt in the back that might fit her. It's the best I can do right now," she was saying quietly. "Thank you, Maria." "That's very kind," Evelyn said, her voice tight. It was this scene of quiet cleanup that Marcus returned to. He saw the 2 women, the blankets, the continued fuss, and his patience already worn thin, snapped. "Are you still making a scene over this?" he boomed. Every head in the business class cabin turned. Ben Carter, the older gentleman in 9C, who had witnessed the initial bump, looked up from his novel, his eyebrows furrowing. Evelyn stood up slowly. She was tall, and in this moment she seemed to tower over him despite his height. "We are not making a scene. We are cleaning up the mess you made." "The mess I made," Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "The clumsy girl with the drink cart made the mess, and frankly, you're making it worse. It's just juice. I'm sure it's not the first time you've had to deal with a stain." The implication hung in the air, venomous and clear. Evelyn's blood ran cold. "What did you just say?" Marcus high on his own arrogance, and the two Scotches saw no reason to stop. He was used to winning arguments by sheer blunt force intimidation. "I said I'm sure you're used to it," he said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial, ugly drawl. "I know how it is. Your people are always so dramatic. Always looking for a handout, aren't you? Always trying to get something for free." He looked from Evelyn to Chloe, who had gone silent, her tear-stained face peeking out from the blanket. "I see it now." Marcus continued, a smug, rotten smile spreading across his face. "This is a shakedown. The distraught mother, the crying child. You think you're going to get a free flight out of this? Maybe a few thousand in travel vouchers. Is that the game?" Silence. The hum of the engines was the only sound. The cabin had become a vacuum, all the air sucked out by the sheer, unadulterated venom of his words. Ben Carter in 9C finally spoke. "Sir," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That is quite enough. I saw the entire thing. You were rude, you were impatient, and you caused the incident. What you are doing now it's just despicable." Marcus rounded on him. "Oh, a white knight, mind your own business, old man. This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me," Ben said, placing his book down. "It has to do with everyone on this plane. We don't want to listen to your filth." "My filth?" Marcus was incredulous. "I'm the victim here. I'm being harassed by this woman. That's enough." Maria's voice was no longer polite. It was a whip-crack of pure, undiluted authority. She had materialized from the galley, her face pale with anger. "Mr. Thorne, you will return to your seat, now." "I will not," Marcus yelled, jabbing a finger at her. "I am a Platinum Medallion member. I spend over $100,000 a year with this airline. You work for me. And I am being assaulted by this passenger and her brat. And this old fool, I demand you do something." "I am doing something, sir," Maria said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy calm. She stood directly in front of him, blocking his path. "Your language is abusive. Your behavior is disruptive. You have used racially charged language against another passenger. You are in violation of federal air regulations regarding interference with a flight crew. Return to your seat, or I will be forced to inform the captain." The word captain seemed to give Marcus a moment's pause, but his ego, massive and bruised, wouldn't let him back down. "Oh, you'll inform the captain, good. Perfect," he sneered. "Finally, someone with some authority, someone who understands business. You tell him that Marcus Thorne wants to speak to him. Tell him I'm filing a formal complaint against this entire incompetent crew, starting with you, and that I'm going to have you all fired." He shoved past her, not toward his seat, but back toward the galley. "I'll tell him myself." "Sir, you cannot go to the flight deck," Maria yelled, grabbing his arm. He ripped his arm away. "Get your hands off me!" The entire cabin was on its feet now, cell phones suddenly discreetly pointed in his direction. Evelyn, however, was perfectly still. She hadn't said a word. She was just watching him. Her surgeon's eyes cold, analytical, and filled with a terrifying, precise calm. She was no longer just angry. She was observing, collecting data. Maria, seeing she'd lost control of the situation, immediately went to the internal phone in the galley. She punched in the code for the cockpit. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking slightly but firm. "This is Maria. We have a level 2 disturbance in the business cabin. A passenger is belligerent, physically non-compliant, and using racial slurs against another passenger. I need flight deck assistance. Now." The cabin was silent. Marcus stood in the galley, breathing heavily, his suit jacket askew. He looked like a man who had just realized he'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. From the phone, a voice crackled, calm and deep. "Understood, Maria. Lock the galley. I'm on my way out." The click of the cockpit door unlocking was one of the most definitive sounds in air travel. It was a heavy, metallic thunk that signaled a shift in authority. In this case, it was a death knell for Marcus Thorne's arrogance. The door swung open, and Captain David Henderson stepped out. He was not what Marcus had expected. He wasn't some paunchy, graying, good old boy. Captain Henderson was tall, fit, with a commanding presence that filled the small galley instantly. His uniform was immaculate. His silver and black hair was cut with military precision, and his eyes, a piercing blue, were currently as cold and hard as glacial ice. He looked less like a bus driver and more like a 4-star general. Beside him, the first officer, a younger man named Kevin, stood in the cockpit doorway, watching his hand near the comms. "I'm Captain Henderson," he said. His voice was a low baritone designed to cut through engine noise and panic. "I understand there's a problem." Marcus, suddenly finding his bravado again, puffed out his chest. "Captain, thank God. My name is Marcus Thorne. I'm in 8B. Your crew is completely out of control. This woman," he gestured vaguely back towards Tis, the cabin, "and her child. They created a disturbance, and your purser, Maria, she actually put her hands on me. It's a clear assault. I want to file a report." Captain Henderson did not look at Marcus. He looked at Maria. "Maria, your report." Maria, now back in her professional element, spoke with crisp, clear, fact-based precision. At 14:20 Zulu, Mr. Thorne, in 8B, bypassed the beverage cart against flight attendant instructions. In doing so, he caused a full cup of cran-apple juice to be spilled on passenger Chloe Reed in 10E, a minor. He then verbally abused the child and her mother, Dr. Evelyn Reed, in 10D. When Dr. Reed requested an apology, Mr. Thorne refused and used racially charged language, including, quote, "your people," and accused the passengers of attempting to get a handout. His volume was disruptive. Passenger Ben Carter in 9C attempted to intervene and was verbally abused. Mr. Thorne then advanced on me in the galley, refusing all crew instructions, and I initiated Level 2 protocols. That is my report. The captain's eyes never left Maria's face as she spoke. He nodded once. Only then did his gaze shift slowly and settle on Marcus Thorne. It was a look of such profound, laser-focused disappointment and contempt that Marcus physically took a step back. "Mr. Thorne," the captain began, "I've also received a full report from Mr. Carter in 9C, transmitted via the in-flight chat system to the crew. His report corroborates Ms. Gonzalez's word for word. He also adds that you called Dr. Reed dramatic and looking for a lawsuit." Marcus's face was turning a splotchy, panicked red. This is a misunderstanding. They're ganging up on me. That old man, he's senile. Mr. Carter is a retired federal judge." "Mr. Thorne, I doubt he's senile," the captain said, his voice flat. But that's irrelevant. I have 2 credible reports, one from my senior crew, that you have, in this order, failed to follow crew instructions caused injury to a minor. Injury. It was Juice, Marcus squeaked. She's a child. You covered her in a cold liquid and made her cry. That's an injury in my book, Henderson countered, not missing a beat. You then used racially motivated abusive language, and you created a disturbance that forced me and my first officer to divert our attention from the safe operation of this aircraft. Of all the things you've done in the last 10 minutes, that's the one that bothers me the most. Marcus was trapped. The small galley which had been his staging ground for a show of power now felt like a holding cell. It's been a very stressful day, Captain. Marcus tried shifting tactics. I have a multi-million-dollar merger on the line in Los Angeles. I'm not myself. A stressful day. The captain repeated the words, tasting them. A stressful day. You think you're the only one Dr. Reed in 10D is on her way to deliver the keynote speech at a medical conference. She's a pediatric surgeon, Mr. Thorne. She's presenting research that could save hundreds of children. That sounds stressful, but she hasn't taken it out on anyone. Marcus was stunned. How? How do you know that? It's my job to know who's on my plane, the captain said simply. Especially my distinguished passengers. Maria, go back to the cabin. Check on Dr. Reed and Chloe. Tell them the situation is being handled. Maria nodded, gave Marcus a wide, cold berth, and slipped back through the curtain. The swoosh of it closing left Marcus alone in the galley with the captain. Now, Captain Henderson said, taking a small step closer. You and I are going to have a chat. I've been a pilot for 25 years, Mr. Thorne. Captain Henderson said, his voice low and conversational, which was somehow more terrifying than if he had been shouting. I've flown search and rescue in the Coast Guard. I've flown emergency medical supplies into disaster zones, and for the last 15 years, I've flown commercial. I have seen it all. I've had medical emergencies, mechanical failures, and I once had a guy try to light his shoes on fire. But you are a special kind of problem. Captain, I am telling you it was a misunderstanding. Marcus babbled, sweat beading on his forehead. Was it a misunderstanding when you called a 9-year-old child a brat? The captain cut in. Was it a misunderstanding when you looked at a black doctor and accused her of looking for a handout? I didn't mean... Stop talking. The command was so absolute that Marcus's mouth snapped shut. You seem to be a man who only understands things when they are put in terms you can relate to, Henderson said. Value. Business. Let's talk about that. Your platinum status. Your $100,000 a year. Do you know what the profit margin is on a single flight like this? Do you know what the fuel cost is? Your status is a rounding error, Mr. Thorne. It's a gold-plated coupon. It doesn't buy you the right to abuse other passengers. It doesn't buy you the right to be a racist. The captain leaned against the bulkhead, crossing his arms. He looked tired. Let me show you something, he said. He reached not for his wallet, but for his phone. He unlocked it and pulled up a photo. He held the screen up to Marcus's face. It was a picture of a beautiful, smiling black woman in a doctor's white coat and a little girl about Chloe's age with the same bright, gap-toothed smile and a cascade of intricate braids. They were standing on a beach, beaming. Marcus stared, confused. Who is that? That who? The captain said, his voice now filled with a quiet, dangerous pride. Is Dr. Alana Henderson, my wife. She's a trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and that is my daughter Maya." Marcus Thorne's blood turned to ice water. The entire catastrophic picture snapped into focus. "My daughter," the captain continued, his eyes drilling into Marcus's, looks a lot like Chloe Reed. "Don't you think wears her hair the same way? Has that same bright, I-can-do-anything look in her eye? She's 9, just like Chloe." He put the phone away. "So you see, Mr. Thorne, when you look at Dr. Reed and her daughter, you see your people. You see a hand out. You see a shakedown. When I look at them, I see my wife. I see my daughter. I see a family just trying to get to Los Angeles, same as you." He took a step closer. Marcus was now pressed against the beverage cart with nowhere to go. "My wife," Henderson said, his voice barely a whisper, "gets misunderstandings like this all the time. People in the ER who refuse to be treated by her. Colleagues who call her aggressive when she's just being authoritative like a man. Patients who assume she's a nurse, and she handles it with a grace and a dignity that you, Mr. Thorne, couldn't possibly comprehend. So when you come on to my aircraft, this 400-ton piece of machinery that I am responsible for, and you bring that particular brand of filth, that poison, and you spill it on a child, you don't just have a problem with Dr. Reed, you have a problem with me." Marcus was white. He was shaking. "Captain, I am so sorry. I had no idea. Please, don't do anything. That deal, it's my whole company. I'll apologize. I'll buy her a new tablet. I'll buy her 10 tablets. I'll give her my seat." Captain Henderson held up a hand. "I'm glad we finally have your attention. But we're not at the making deals part of this conversation yet. We're at the consequences part. You see, Mr. Thorne," Captain Henderson said, straightening his tie, his general persona back in full force, "your actions have created a safety issue. My crew is distracted. My passengers are on edge. And I have a disruptive, non-compliant passenger. The FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, has very clear rules for this. And I, as the pilot in command, have absolute authority." He began to pace 3 steps one way, 3 steps back. The galley was his new cockpit. "We are currently 40 minutes from the Colorado border. I have a lot of options. Option A," he said, holding up one finger, "is my favorite. I call air traffic control. I declare a security threat. I divert this flight to the nearest suitable airport, let's say Denver. It's a big hub, they can handle it. It'll cost this airline about $50,000 in fuel and fees, but I'm authorized." He watched as the color drained from Marcus's face. "When we land in Denver," he continued, "the plane will be directed to a remote hard stand, not the gate. The doors will be opened, and you will be met, not by airline staff. You will be met by the FBI and the TSA. Interference with a flight crew is a federal offense. You'll be put in cuffs, Mr. Thorne, right there on the tarmac. You'll be taken to a federal holding cell. You will definitely miss your meeting in Los Angeles. You'll likely miss your meetings for the next 6 months. And your platinum status, it will be revoked. You will be placed on the no-fly list, not just for this airline, but for all our partner carriers. Permanently. Your company, your deal. That will be the least of your worries." "You can't," Marcus whispered, horrified. "You wouldn't overjuice." "Not overjuice," the captain said, his voice sharp as a knife. "Over racism, over belligerence, over threatening my crew. Yes, I would. And I'd sleep like a baby tonight." He let the silence hang for a long, heavy moment. "However," he said, "I'm feeling generous. And I'm thinking of Dr. Reed. She doesn't want to go to Denver. She wants to get to Los Angeles and give her speech." So I am prepared to offer you option B. Marcus looked up, his eyes wide with a desperate, pleading hope. Anything. I'll take it. Don't be so eager, the captain warned. Option B is humiliation for you. Option B is this. You are going to go back to your seat. You are not going to speak. You are not going to use your laptop. You are not going to order another drink. You will not so much as look in the direction of row 10. You will sit there in silence, and you will reflect on your behavior. Understood. Yes, yes. Captain, of course, Marcus said, nodding frantically. I'm not finished. When we land in Los Angeles, you will not stand up. You will not get your bag. You will remain in your seat until every single other passenger has deplaned. From first class, from business, and from all 30 rows of economy. You will be the last person off this plane, because you will be met at the gate by airline ground security and an LAPD liaison. Marcus's face fell. Police, you said? I said a liaison, Mr. Thorne. To take a formal report, to decide if charges need to be filed. That will depend largely on your behavior between now and then, and on how Dr. Reed wishes to proceed. But my meeting, I'll be late. That sounds like a you problem, Henderson said flatly. And one more thing. The tablet. You're buying her a new one, the top-of-the-line model. You will give Ms. Gonzalez your credit card before you sit down, and she will run the charge right here on the in-flight terminal for $1,299 plus a $500 inconvenience charge that will be converted into a travel voucher for Dr. Reed. Do you understand? That's robbery, Marcus sputtered. No, sir, the captain said, his eyes narrowing. That's restitution, and it's non-negotiable. He stared Marcus down. Marcus, trapped, defeated, and utterly broken, finally gave a single jerky nod. Fine. Option B, I'll do it. Good. But you have one more thing to do, and this is the most important part. Captain Henderson stepped aside, gesturing toward the curtain. You're going to go out there right now, and you are going to apologize. Not to me, not to Maria. You are going to apologize to Dr. Reed and to her daughter, Chloe. And you are going to mean it, because every passenger in that cabin and I will be listening. He pressed the call button. Maria reappeared instantly. Maria, Mr. Thorne has something he'd like to say to Dr. Reed. Please, escort him. Maria Gonzalez, her face a perfect, unreadable mask of professional neutrality, pulled back the galley curtain. The swoosh of the fabric was like a starting pistol. Marcus Thorne stepped out. If he thought he could do this quietly, he was mistaken. Every passenger who was awake, and at this point that was nearly everyone in the front half of the plane, was watching. The cabin was silent. Ben Carter, the retired judge, had his glasses on, staring at him over the rims. Maria led him the 2 rows back. She stood beside him, her arms crossed. An escort, a guard. Evelyn Reed was not looking at him. She was focused on Chloe, who was wearing an oversized Oceanic Air crew sweatshirt and was quietly playing a game on her mother's phone. Dr. Reed, Marcus began. His voice was a reedy, thin croak. Evelyn looked up. Her eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were analytical, like she was examining a specimen under a microscope. It was a look that unnerved him more than any open hostility. Mr. Thorne, she said. Not a question, a statement. Marcus swallowed, his prominent Adam's apple bobbing. Dr. Reed and Chloe. He was looking at the floor, at the seat, anywhere but at them. Mr. Thorne, look at my daughter when you speak to her. Evelyn said, her voice soft but unbreakable. He flinched. Slowly he raised his eyes and met Chloe's. I am very sorry, he stammered. The words were like pulling teeth. For what happened. I was rude, and I was impatient. It was my fault that the juice spilled. I apologize, and for the things I said. They were unacceptable and untrue. And I'm deeply sorry. To both of you. Evelyn watched him. She could see the captain standing in the aisle at the front of the cabin, his arms crossed, watching. She let the silence stretch, letting Marcus marinate in his own public humiliation. Every second was an agony for him. Finally she spoke. Mr. Thorne, my daughter's tablet is broken. Yes, I know, I'm paying for it, he said quickly. A new one. The best one. The captain. I'm handling it. That's not the point, Evelyn said, her voice cutting. My daughter's tablet is broken, her clothes are ruined, our flight is disturbed. That's inconvenient. But what you said, that is different. You didn't just spill juice. You spilled hate. You looked at a black woman and a black child and you saw a shakedown. You saw your people. Marcus visibly winced at his own words being repeated. My daughter is 9. Evelyn continued, her voice rising just enough to carry. She is a straight-A student. She speaks 2 languages. She wants to be an astronaut. She is not your people. She is her people. And I am her mother, a doctor, a surgeon. Just like, she paused, many other people in this world. She looked at him. Your apology. It is a start. But I want you to know this. I don't accept it for me. I don't need your apology. But my daughter, she needed to hear you say it. So for that, we hear you. It was a brilliant surgical dismissal. Not we accept, not it's okay. We hear you. Chloe, sensing her mother's strength, peeked out. You have bad manners, she said, her small voice clear as a bell. A few passengers stifled a cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Ben Carter smiled. Marcus Thorne, bright red his suit, a 3000 sackcloth oath, and Ashes just nodded. Yes. You may go, Evelyn said. He turned, and to Maria's visible satisfaction, made the long, silent walk of shame back to 8B. He sank into his seat, put his head in his hands, and did not move for the rest of the flight. The landing in Los Angeles was smooth. As the plane taxied to the gate, the fastened seatbelt sign dinged off. Everyone stood up, except Marcus. He sat as instructed while the first-class passengers deplaned. He sat as Evelyn and Chloe, gathering their things, walked past him without a second glance. He sat as Ben Carter walked by, paused, and just shook his head in pity. He sat as the entire economy cabin families, students, businessmen, and tourists shuffled past, many of them, looking at the man in the suit who was being forced to stay. Finally, the plane was empty. Maria walked up to his row. Mr. Thorne, you can come now. He grabbed his bag and walked to the jet bridge. Just as the captain had promised, 2 uniformed LAPD officers and a stern-looking airline ground supervisor named Susan were waiting for him. Mr. Marcus Thorne, Susan asked, holding a clipboard. Please come with us. We need to have a word before you're allowed into the terminal. The small grey office that Susan, the airline supervisor, led Marcus to was a windowless box in the bowels of LAX. The air was stale, and the only decor was a framed poster of an Airbus A350 and a clock that seemed to tick obscenely slowly. Marcus Thorne sat on a hard plastic chair for what felt like an eternity. The two LAPD officers, a man and a woman, were professional, but cold. They took his driver's license, asked him to confirm his identity, and then they just sat filling out digital forms on a tough pad, leaving Marcus to stew in the silence, broken only by the click-clack of their keys. He was a man who lived by the motto, "Time is money." And this was the ultimate agonizing waste of both. He kept checking his Rolex. 7:00 p.m. 7:30 p.m. His phone, which they'd allowed him to keep, was buzzing with frantic texts from his team. "Where are you, sir? Meeting prep tonight." He couldn't even begin to formulate a reply. Finally, at 7:45 p.m. Susan re-entered her face, as impassive as a granite cliff. She held a single printed sheet. "Mr. Marcus Thorne," she said, her voice official, as if reading an indictment. "We have concluded our internal investigation, which includes the formal written and signed report from Captain David Henderson, a pilot with a 25-year unblemished record. It also includes witness statements from Purser Maria Gonzalez, flight attendant Sarah Jenkins, and passenger Mr. Benjamin Carter, retired federal judge." The retired federal judge part hit Marcus like a physical blow. Of course, he hadn't been arguing with an old fool. He'd been arguing with the law. "Dr. Reed," Susan continued, "has stated that given the captain's intervention and your formal apology, she does not wish to press criminal charges at this time. She stated, and I quote, 'I have a speech to give. Mr. Thorne is no longer my problem.'" Marcus felt a small, idiotic surge of relief, which Susan immediately crushed. "The LAPD will therefore release you without a formal citation. However," she said, her eyes narrowing, "the airline is not so forgiving." She slid the paper across the table. "This is a receipt for $1,799.99. That's $1,299.99 for the top specification tablet, as promised, and a $500 travel voucher for Dr. Reed as compensation, which has already been credited to her account. Your platinum medallion status and all associated privileges are revoked effective immediately." "Revoked, not just suspended," Marcus stammered. "Revoked," Susan confirmed with extreme prejudice. "Furthermore, this is a formal written notice of probationary status. For the next 12 months, you are on a zero-tolerance watch list with this airline and all 26 of our global alliance partners. One complaint, Mr. Thorne, one crossword to a gate agent, one sigh of impatience, one single, solitary report of disruptive behavior, and you will be permanently banned for life. We will make it impossible for you to fly commercial. Do I make myself clear?" Marcus, the man who'd barked about mergers just hours before, looked at the paper. His signature was required. He was signing a contract of his own good behavior. Humiliated, his hand shaking, he signed. "You are free to go," Susan said, taking the paper. "Have the day you've earned, Mr. Thorne." By the time his cab fought through LA traffic to his hotel, it was nearly 10 p.m. His 9 a.m. meeting, the $50 million lifeline for his failing company, was hours away. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He stood in the shower for an hour trying to wash off the phantom smell of stale plane air and his own failure. He put on the hotel robe and tried to review his presentation, but the numbers just swam. His mind kept replaying the events, not with remorse, but with a frantic, terrified anger. The captain's face, the wife, the daughter, the judge. It was a perfect cosmic setup. He chugged coffee from the minibar, his heart jackhammering. By 7 a.m., he was a wreck. He was a man running on fumes. His confidence shattered, replaced by a desperate, twitchy anxiety. He put on his last clean suit, a navy brioni, but it felt like a costume. He looked in the mirror and saw a fraud. He arrived at the gleaming glass and steel tower of Aura Healthcare Innovations at 8:45 a.m., his hands clammy. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, with a view that spanned from the Hollywood sign to the ocean. It was a room designed to intimidate, filled with people who were not intimidated by anything. 6 executives were already seated. He shook their hands, his own grip too tight, his palm moist. "Mr. Thorne, Michael Harris," the CEO said, a man with a warm smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good to finally put a face to the name. We're all very curious about your pitch. Your numbers have been, well, let's call them optimistic." A small ripple of polite, shark-like laughter. Marcus felt a drop of sweat run down his spine. "We're just waiting on our chief medical officer," Michael said, checking his watch. "She's the final voice on this partnership. The deal doesn't happen without her full, unequivocal buy-in. She's our moral and medical compass." "Ah, and that sounds like her now." Michael beamed. Marcus heard the click of heels on the marble floor in the hallway. He heard a low, warm voice, a voice he knew laughing at something a secretary said. "Sorry I'm late, Michael," the voice said. "My daughter's new tablet setup was more complicated than I." The voice stopped. The door swung open. Marcus Thorne's heart, which had been hammering, simply stopped. Dr. Evelyn Reed stood in the doorway. She was not in a crew sweatshirt. She was in a flawlessly tailored deep blue power suit, her hair pulled back in a sleek professional bun. She held a leather portfolio, and her eyes calm, brilliant and analytical swept the room, landing on him. She did not gasp. She did not look surprised. She looked disappointed, resigned, and then terrifyingly she looked resolved. "Dr. Reed," Michael said, oblivious, "this is Marcus Thorne of Thorne Analytics." Evelyn walked into the room, her presence filling it as completely as Captain Henderson's had filled the galley. She took her seat at the head of the table directly opposite Marcus. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice perfectly even, betraying nothing. "We met yesterday on the flight from Chicago." The bottom fell out of Marcus's world. Michael Harris's head swiveled. The other executives who had been looking at their phones were now all looking at him. The sharks were in the water. "Oh, small world," Michael boomed, still trying to be jovial. "Well then, you're already acquainted. Let's get started. Marcus, the floor is yours." The next 45 minutes were not a presentation. They were a vivisection. Marcus was a ghost. He fumbled his slides. He called the CEO Captain at one point, then Mr. Harris, then just Sir. The optimistic numbers now looked even to him like outright lies. He was sweating through his suit, the $3,000 Brioni now a shroud. The whole time, Evelyn just watched. She didn't interrupt. She just sat there, her pen poised, taking meticulous, silent notes. When he finally mercifully finished with a weak, "So any questions?" The silence was deafening. Michael Harris looked confused and annoyed. "That's it. Frankly, Marcus, this is even weaker than your deck. I'm not seeing the synergy. I'm seeing a boat taking on water, and you're asking me to buy a ticket. The projections are sound, Marcus whimpered. If I may, Michael, Evelyn said, her voice cut through the room. Every head turned to her. She hadn't even looked at her notes. Mr. Thorne's company, Thorne Analytics, she began, her voice crisp, is built on a model of disruption, of moving fast, of breaking things. We've all read his file, but I believe his presentation today and his performance shows us the true cost of that model. She looked directly at Marcus. Our company, Aura Healthcare, is not Thorne Analytics. We are built on integrity, on patience, on precision. We are in the business of saving lives, and that means we must trust our partners implicitly. We have to know that when the pressure is on, when things get stressful, she loaded the word with meaning, that our partners will not crack, that they will not cut corners, that they will make the right, the ethical, and the decent choice. She stood up, a clear, powerful signal that the meeting was over. Mr. Thorne, yesterday on Oceanic Air Flight 451 you were under pressure. You had a big deal on the line. And you showed me exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. You showed me a man who is cruel to children, a man who is racist to strangers, a man who bullies and threatens service workers to get his way. You showed me a man with no integrity, no character, and no respect. She placed her pen gently on the table. Your numbers aren't optimistic, Mr. Thorne. They're desperate. Because a company run by a man like you, a man with no patience and no integrity, is a company that is and should be failing. She turned to her CEO. Michael, I cannot in good conscience recommend we partner with this man or his firm. I cannot recommend we tie our brand, our reputation, and our $50 million investment to a person of this caliber. My vote is a hard, unequivocal no. In fact, I believe this meeting is over. Marcus just sat there, a hollow shell. The deal was dead. His company was dead. He was dead. Marcus Michael Harris said, his voice now pure ice. The warm CEO was gone. Get out. Evelyn didn't wait to watch. She picked up her portfolio. Now, if you'll all excuse me, she said to the room, I have to call my daughter and check on her new tablet. She walked out of the boardroom, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Marcus's walk of shame past the horrified executives and the pitying receptionist was 1,000 times longer than the aisle of the 777. As Evelyn stepped into the sunlit elevator, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Dr. Reed, this is Captain David Henderson. I was, coincidentally, reviewing the passenger manifest for your return flight. I've taken the liberty of upgrading you and Chloe to first class. Also, my wife, Dr. Alana Henderson, says your research is brilliant and wants to have dinner. The hard-working people, the decent people. We have to stick together. Fly safe. Evelyn Reed smiled. She leaned her head back against the elevator wall, and for the first time in 48 hours took a deep, clean, victorious breath. And that's the story of Marcus Thorne. He thought his money and status made him invincible. He thought he could spill his hate on anyone he saw as less than and get away with it. But he forgot one simple rule: the world is small and character is everything. He didn't just lose a deal, he was exposed for who he truly was, by the very people he disrespected. True karma isn't always a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a quiet, professional no from a person you failed to see. What did you think of Marcus's hard karma? Was it the perfect consequence, or should the captain have diverted the plane? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this story and want more drama, more twists and more hard-hitting karma, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. We'll see you in the next one.